Hey, this is Jayanam with a Blender 2.82 cartoon character sculpting video. The character is originally made by Alex Gomez. He sculpted it with ZBrush. You can see some images of the video from his channel that I highly recommend. Check it out. He has great character sculpting videos. The link can be found in the description below. Okay, but now let's come to sculpting with Blender 2.82, an experimental build. I start with the default cube and add a subsurf modifier, which will be the head of the character in the end. The most complicated part. The video will be speed up. It took me about 2.5 hours to sculpt the character. I was struggling with one bug of this Blender alpha build, and this is when you are in orthographic viewport and rotate the view. You come back to perspective mode and then the distance is not corrected. And that's a bit annoying, but I still wanted to use this version because of the new features. But okay, in the end I coped with this bug. Alright, I dragged out the neck here from an inverted mask. And I already remeshed this using the voxel remesher, but not at a very high voxel size. This is a beginning stage, a kind of blocking out the shapes. And I already have a quite dense topology, but this depends a bit on the character that you are creating. Here I come with the inflate brush to add some, kind of details already to the neck. And at this stage I try to understand the anatomy of the character and perhaps also try to understand which personality the character will have. And I recommend not to hurry at this stage. Really take your time till you have the feeling that the base mesh, these basic shapes, really describe the character. You see, I'm doing a lot of corrections here. I don't want the head to be symmetrical because this isn't the nature of the character. But I also don't want it to appear deformed or ugly, which is a bit tricky. Okay, now I have the feeling that I can go with this. I also remeshed it with a higher voxel size and I'm ready to add the eyes. I used the mask brush to paint the eyes onto the head and I set the brush to full strength. And I'm playing around with this mask, add and remove parts, just till I'm happy with this shape. Alright, now we can go ahead and invert the mask and move this part into the head using the move brush. And that's a basic technique that I will use for the left eye as well, and this is a bit smaller. Okay, it looks quite nice, but still I can use the grab brush to move some parts around using a smooth fall off. Okay, now I add some more details because I remeshed with a higher voxel size. And most of the time I use the inflate and the grab brush. Okay, and then I change to my tablet and the grease brush to first only indicate a cut in the middle of the head. I draw this in very slightly just to see where these cuts will be. And again I have to move some parts around, which are not located as I like them to be, but that's okay, it's not a big deal. Now I carve this line a bit more into the head. If you have a tablet for this task, it's great, but it isn't required. You can use a very cheap tablet. The only thing you need is pressure sensitivity, which most tablets support, so you don't have to spend too much money for this. Now to create these kind of ripped parts, I add some lines on the left and the right side, also with the grease brush. Then I switch to a sharper fall off for the grease brush to carve deeper into the mesh. Okay, then I use the inflate brush to raise the height of some parts, which looks quite nice, but be careful to not overdo it. Use a very low strength of the brush. And then you can use the pinch brush as well to pinch some parts more together. And also for this one, do it very carefully. Slowly, take your time, don't rush, to improve this more and more. It's a tricky part, the most complicated. And here comes another trick. I add a mask to one side of the mesh. And then I use the grab brush to move the parts from the other side in the direction where the mask is, and this looks like as if some parts are kind of overlapping or as if they are bound together. Play around with this, it's not that easy when you do it the first time. Okay, now I invert the mask and do the same for some parts of the other side. By the way, you can invert the mask by pressing Ctrl and the I key. Alright, looks nice already. Now I remesh again, add a higher voxel size, and then I use brushes like grease or pinch to add more details to the mesh. Okay, I'm happy with this, so it's time to add the eyes. I go to object mode and add a UV sphere. And then we can scale, move and rotate it till it fits the eye socket. For these transformations I also use constraints. For example, I press R followed by the axis X, Y or Z. And with these tools and shortcuts you can align an object very fast. Okay, I now set this to smooth shading. Then I go to sculpt mode and use the grab brush to make this eye really fit the socket. After that, I do the same for the left eye. Okay, and now we have to add some kind of ropes that bind and pull the two sides of the head together. For this I will add a torus. And first I wanted to remesh it to a high poly mesh and then cut it, but then I decided to go to edit mode, use box select to select one half and then remove it. Then select the caps and fill these by pressing the F key. And then we have an object that looks a bit like a string. And now we can duplicate this and use the move or the transform tool to rotate, scale and move it so that we can use it at several parts of the head. This is the same procedure for all objects, just press Shift and D to duplicate it and then move it to the next location. I like to change the rotation and even the scale a bit for each duplicated object. Okay, once we added all the strings, we select the head again, then go to sculpt mode and select the draw brush and add some kind of small holes at the areas where the strings go into the head. Press the Ctrl key so that you are subtracting and not adding height. And that's a very nice and interesting effect. Okay, after that a few more corrections, and I also add some more details using the inflate brush. Now I go to object mode and join some objects, for example the eyes and the torus objects. Then I move the objects upwards and we can start adding the body, which is basically a shirt. I also start with the cube and add a subdivision surface modifier, then add an edge loop, and then I scale this in edit mode to create the base mesh. Then I use again the voxel remesher to turn it into a more high poly mesh, but be sure to apply the modifier first. And then I use again the grab brush to form an appropriate shape. I add a mask to the upper part, and then again invert it by pressing Ctrl and I, and then I move this part into the mesh. And then I come again with the grab brush to create the collar of the shirt. And for creating the sleeves I use the same technique. I paint in a mask with symmetry enabled, invert it again and use the move brush to move out these parts. And then you can again use the grab brush to build the shape of a shirt. You have to practice this a lot. The best is to practice this each day, at least 1 hour sculpting, just to see what works and what doesn't. That's the way to improve your skills. Okay, now we have this part here at the bottom. I also add a mask to this and invert it because I want to bring it into the mesh. You see, that's the same technique, and then I remesh. And again the same technique for the sleeves. And in the end we can add some rough details using the inflate brush. Okay, that's the shirt. Now let's add a second one. I think it's called a vest, and it is only visible here at the neck, so I add a cylinder and I scale it up along the Z axis. Okay, and then I go to sculpt mode and remesh it. Alright, and then we have to move the neck a bit more into the middle so that it fits the cylinder. And then I add again a mask to the top and move this part to the inside. Nice, and now it's time to add the lower body. I add a cube and a subsurf modifier again and create the base mesh. I set the origin to the geometry, And then I move this part upwards into the shirt object. After that I select the shirt, switch to sculpt mode and use the grab brush to adjust the shirt to the lower body part. Okay, what's missing is the legs. I remesh the body object and draw a mask to it so that I can extrude the legs with the move brush. Once I'm happy with the basic shape, for the legs I use the mask split and fill holes method to cut away the lower part. But they are a bit too close together, so I move them to the outsides with the grab brush, and then I add some more details using the inflate brush. The last thing that we have to add are the arms. Also for these I start with a cube, a small one, and add a subsurf modifier to it. And then I extrude the arm by pressing the E key, and I rotate the faces to create the bendings for the arm. You can also use a curve for this right from the start, but for this simple object we can use this extrude and rotate technique, which is by the way simple box modeling. In the end I apply the modifier, remesh the arm and add some details using the grab and the inflate brush. And to bring the arm to the other side as well, I add a mirror modifier to it, after I set the origin to the 3D cursor, which is located at the center. Alright guys, that's it. The character is sculpted, and I have to say I'm quite happy with it. You can also turn to a different matte cap if you like. Yeah, this looks really nice. And the next step will be retopology and then texture painting. I hope you liked this sculpting video for Blender 2.82. If you do, then let me know. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out the one of Alex Gomez, who created this character using ZBrush. Follow me on my Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and you can support me by being my patron. This would really help a lot. Thank you guys, and I see you in the next one.